The Kincora Boys Home scandal centred around a notorious home for boys in Belfast, Northern Ireland, that was the scene of a disgraceful child sex abuse ring in the 1970s and 80s. And, many believe, an equally disgraceful cover-up by the authorities. Despite the setting up of the Northern Ireland Historical Institutional Abuse Inquiry, or HIA, in May 2016, rumours and allegations persist that high-ranking members of the establishment from around Britain and Ireland were heavily involved and shielded from justice. Kincora Boys Home was established in 1958 as a haven for teenagers from difficult backgrounds. According to boys who were abused there, crimes began almost as soon as it opened and continued unabated until it closed in 1980. Stories of abuse first broke publicly on the 24th of January that year, with a story in the Irish Independent. Jerry Fitt, at the time the SDLP MP for West Belfast, raised the issue in Westminster, demanding to know why no investigations and prosecutions had taken place, despite allegations about Kincora being passed to the police as early as 1977. The Royal Ulster Constabulary had in fact investigated and passed a report to the Director of Public Prosecutions, yet nothing was done. By the 3rd of April 1980, 3 members of staff at the home, William McGrath, Raymond Semple, and Joseph Mains, were charged with a number of offences relating to the sexual abuse of children in their care over a number of years. All were convicted for 4, 5, and 6 years respectively. But many were suspicious. Why had the report been buried for 3 years by the government? Why were 3 staff members abruptly charged and convicted as soon as the scandal surfaced? Were they sacrificed to protect others? Author Martin Dillon, in his book The Dirty War, alleged that McGrath was connected to MI5 via loyalist paramilitaries. The potential involvement of MI5 raised 2 equally repulsive possibilities: that they were squashing investigations into Kincora to protect members of the establishment, or that they were luring members of the establishment into Kincora to compromise and blackmail them. The satirical current affairs magazine Private Eye also alleged that high-ranking members of the Whitehall Civil Service and senior officers of the British military were involved in the sexual abuse of boys at Kincora. There's lots more to come in this video, but please consider liking, subscribing to the channel, and sharing. And please consider supporting my work with a PayPal donation. The link is in the description. Thank you. Northern Ireland Secretary James Pryor, the British government minister responsible for the province, set up 2 separate inquiries. The first was not public, but collapsed when 3 members resigned because they were unhappy with the standard of the RUC's investigation. A second, public inquiry, under Judge William Hughes, was set up in January 1984. Its 355-page report, released in December 1985, was mainly procedural. But he also said the events were not, quote, exceptional, and, quote, symptoms of a general malaise permeating the United Kingdom. This was seen as an oblique reference to allegations of establishment involvement and cover-ups, which Hughes was unable to directly examine for lack of evidence. Allegations rumbled on until April 1990, when author Robin Bryans alleged in the Dublin-based magazine Now that Lord Mountbatten, Anthony Blunt, and others were all involved in an old boy network which held gay orgies in country houses on both sides of the Irish border, as well as at Kincora Boys Home. He began a letter-writing campaign to the British establishment, making many stinging allegations, but was forced to desist when the police warned him that he could be prosecuted for criminal libel. Over the years, a whole raft of nobility, MPs, policemen, civil servants, and businessmen have been linked with Kincora or related scandals. It would be unfair to name any of them, since most are dead, but it breathed new life into the allegations that Kincora was at the centre of a prostitution ring. In the summer of 2014, two former military intelligence officers, Colin Wallace and Brian Gemmell, made separate allegations. Wallace alleged that he had received intelligence in 1973 regarding crimes at the home, but superior officers buried it. Gemmell said he had also discovered the abuse while monitoring loyalist paramilitaries, but was warned off by superiors. Both men asserted that the whole truth would never emerge unless intelligence services information on Kincora was declassified. Former residents who were abused have been vocal about the abuse they suffered, especially after the wave of allegations that followed the unmasking of Jimmy Savile as one of the worst paedophiles in British history. The victims were particularly upset that the HIA inquiry did not enjoy the same powers as the parallel independent inquiry into child sexual abuse in England and Wales. That inquiry could compel witnesses to testify and demand that security services documents be handed over. But in 2016, Gary Hoy, a former resident of Kincora, lost a UK Supreme Court challenge to the powers of the HIA. The final HIA report in 2017 dismissed any notion of an establishment cover-up, although it did at least recommend swift compensation of £100,000 each to the victims. The report's conclusion that the abuse was limited to only 3 staff members seems inconceivable, given the abuse networks of the 1970s and 80s that were exposed in the rest of the UK during the Operation U-Tree investigation. Whether the lurid tales of high-ranking establishment figures being involved are true or not, there were surely more abusers at Kincora who got away with their evil crimes. For the former residents who live with the legacy of abuse, and those of them who took their own lives because of it, it seems that the whole truth will never be known, and that they will never get the justice they so surely deserve.